States spends more per person on healthcare than other high-income countries, but still has a lower life expectancy.
We have poor outcomes relative to other countries. We pay twice as much as any other country. We pay more and get less.
My platform is built on me talking about being in therapy and dealing with narcissistic personality disorder. I don't trust people with my information because I know I use other people's information against them.
Name brand Adderall is still available for $290 with insurance. It's the generic stuff that most people can afford that's running low. You have a productivity crisis with a slowdown in Adderall and whatnot. You have a literal healthcare crisis if people can't get blood pressure medication, diabetic medication.
These institutions' board of directors gets to choose who gets a liver, who deserves one, and why.
That's a common question they ask all transplant patients. Are you fundraising?
Are you saying environmental influences rewire the brain?
Whatever we do consistently will wire up the brain. Neurons that fire together wire together.
It's usually the folks that have the highest IQ who are most susceptible to developing serious mental illness. When somebody has a psychotic break, it's like a heart attack. It's like a brain attack. It takes a long time to recover from that.
They all took an oath that said, first, do no harm. I'm really fucking angry.
The policies and regulations in place by our governments place people in a position where either they're priced out, they're not allowed to do something with medical doctors, or something that they want to do is banned. So what it does is it forces people to start doing things on their own and learning things on their own. Anybody can learn to be a medical doctor.
We're taught not to see ourselves as part of a collective with a lot more power than the small group that created the system. Hi, this is Carrie Mitchum. Thank you for joining us again at Profit Over People. I'm here today with Larissa and Danielle. They're two nurses that were working in New York City during the height of the pandemic. So we're going to learn a little bit about them and hear their stories. Larissa, Danielle, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for being here. Could you just give us a little bit about your background before we dive into the stories that you have to tell?
My name's Larissa. I've been a nurse for 29 years. I'm an RN. I have a bachelor degree, BSN. Most of my career has been spent in emergency departments. And I found myself in the Bronx in New York City in February and March of 2020 when the pandemic, the coronavirus 19 pandemic hit. And that's where I met Danielle. She was actually my boss. She was the nurse manager of the ER where I was working.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I've been a nurse for 34 years. Always knew I wanted to be a nurse since I've been a little girl. I also have my BSN and pursued my master's towards leadership in nursing. My career consists of mostly critical care, ICU, and level 1 trauma centers. I was born and raised in New York City. I've worked in pretty much all the boroughs of New York City. And that's how I met Larissa. I met Larissa also in the Bronx at the height of the epicenter. New York City is the epicenter of the COVID-19 virus when it hit. Larissa is a very, very, very compassionate, driven nurse, patient-centered care. And I believe that's how we bonded at the bedside.
Well, before the pandemic, it was kind of like she was my boss, and I was really kind of in awe of her. I sort of followed her around hoping to catch little pieces of knowledge because she's so knowledgeable about critical care and one of the most skilled and talented nurses that I ever worked with. And so I sort of just followed her around, and she's a great teacher. She would teach me things here and there. So it kind of started it out as a boss/employee relationship. But then when the pandemic hit and we went into just survival mode with skeleton crew, we really bonded as friends, and we've been besties ever since.
Our souls just completely collided, and
And there's a lot to that. There's a lot of trauma bonding when you go through something.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what
horrific with another person.
Yes,
absolutely. And I don't think that anybody ever can be prepared, ever. And you would think that New York City alone would be prepared for something like this, and we were not.
Did it like creep up on you, or did you guys realize pretty early on, wow, this is something big?
It kind of hit us like a ton of bricks, actually, because we were just talking about that. And I had wound up getting sick a week before, woke up very sick, and high fevers. And, they were like, we were starting to see an influx of people, but at that point, nobody knew what it was at that point. Right. When the influx of people come, I had to go back to work. They forced us to go back to work, but it was like one day we were just normal practicing in the ER setting, and the next day we had the influx of thousands of people coming into the hospital sick, still not knowing what this was.
Wow. That must be overwhelming. Did you identify it as an illness? Did you think there was something in the water? I mean, I can't imagine. You had no information.
No, we didn't. Actually, at that point in time, no. We just know that people we were becoming inundated with sick. Inundated with sick people everywhere.
What did you do?
What did we do?
How do you treat this volume of people? Where do you put them?
We had to go into we went into emergency mode, but not at that point in time. When I say emergency mode, somewhere coming or leading to the middle and ends was very grave for a lot, and we can talk about that more at the end. We had the crews that we had at the time, and still not knowing what it was. We weren't protected at the time. Somewhere near the end of March, I think, is when little pieces started to come out, and then at that point, our fellow staff and doctors and respiratory therapists and housekeeping and nurses, everybody was getting sick at the time. We weren't prepared.
Right. I think, to be quite honest, it's all kind of a blur. I'm really glad that I actually I documented it, and I actually published an article. Otherwise, I wouldn't have, it would just be really even more of a blur. But early on, I think we just thought like it was the flu, in the Northeast during January, February, there's more sick people with respiratory illnesses. So like at first it didn't seem that crazy, but it did seem like very sudden, like all of a sudden we went in, and I just remember when we figured out, we knew what was coming in, someone would come in short of breath. They wouldn't be able to breathe. Their turning gray and blue. Their nail beds are bluish. Having increased work of breathing, feeling panicked because they can't breathe. We put them on the oxygen sensor and it says 88, 87, 86, which is not really compatible with life over the long term. We would get a chest x-ray and there you would see it. It was like a whiteout, like patchy white opacity, like
of their lungs.
Yes. And so we see that and then you think, oh my God, this is COVID. And here it is right in our face. So then we have to intubate the person because they can't breathe and they will die if they cannot breathe, of course, obviously. And then the thing that I remember the most was, here we are in a room. You have the doctor, you have the respiratory therapist, you have a tech, you have a couple nurses, you have residents, and you put the trach tube down into the lungs and all this, and then you have to bag them to get the air into the lungs, and the COVID is just misting out all over the room. And here we are, we don't even really, it's not fully, we don't even know really what it is, but that it kills people. And so we're sitting there, and we had minimal masks. We were given one mask at the beginning of a shift. We worked 12-hour shifts, and dealt with hundreds of people splattered literally with the mucus and the phlegm and the sputum of COVID patients all over everything. And
but we were we only got one mask. We can only have this one mask, and we had to save this one mask, and we couldn't trade it in. And we had to keep that mask for like the week. When you give him one mask, when you came in, you had one little mask. But one of the things now that I'm sitting here and I'm listening to Larissa speaking, and I kind of I want people to see this picture. So before, as the days were turning, and we had people trickling in with these symptoms, and and it was every hospital in New York City, that it went from one day, literally overnight. I think, our capacity of ERs is say 200, 250 people between waiting rooms and stuff. So you doubled that every day. And one day we walked in and you couldn't even see, just the film of a cloud of smoke, and you were like in this war zone. Mm-hmm. And at this point, you're watching everything just turn, and it was like slow motion. And at one point, you would look, and there would be at this point, we were dropping our own. Nurses were getting sick, respiratory therapists were dying, surgeons were dying, doctors were dying, nurses. Then we started to take care of our own, but not even that. We didn't have enough beds for people. And they were lined up together and you just had to keep going. And one day you had 2,000 people in the middle of an emergency room, and you had a skeleton crew trying to work, but yet you tried everything in your power to save these lives. And you can just see the fear on people's faces when they were being wheeled in. And I guess they really thought that they weren't going to make it alive, but not even that. You have to be so supportive to your peers. And, I had rosary beads in my back pocket. And we were trying at that point to be able to put on anything that we could to protect us, because we didn't have enough
bandanas,
just everything. People would, yes, bandanas, that's right. Scarves around their faces. see middle eyes. You couldn't determine who was who at that point. You would put on these plastic suits, and there wouldn't be enough for everybody to go around. So you would try to say,
Like
okay,
the white suits you see, like
hazmat type suit.
yes, the hazmat suits. And now every day you just knew what you were going into, but you would leave your family behind and say, "Oh my God." We would drive together.
At that point, we were living together, and in this apartment actually. Before we actually had to leave this apartment, we did get housing through New York City, because she had a grandbaby here, and we could not expose the family to this. So we would drive from the hotel. And I don't even know what came over me. I looking back, I think, like, why did I even do that? So a lot of nurses left, older nurses, nurses with babies, people who just couldn't hang. But there was something that just clicked in me. I felt like this is...
Don't make me cry.
I'm sorry, it's coming. It's like...
It will start to come back because you're so scared that you're going to die and leave your family. But yet we got up every day to go take care of these patients that when you walked in, it was the dignity was gone. The dignity was gone.
Wow, I did not expect this to happen.
You would pull up and every family member wanted to see their loved one, but they couldn't come in to see their loved one. And they would stand out the door and scratch their hands until they bled to see their loved one. But all their loved ones were dying. There was so much death around us, and we were not prepared. The thing that triggers me is that we had to go into a mode, and as a nurse manager and as a dedicated nurse and such a person with such spirit, that I walked in one day and we finally got to a point where we couldn't take care of all these people, so we had to go into it's disaster management. It's called disaster management. And you being a nurse manager and trying to support your staff and be strong and have to show up every single day and leave your family and my granddaughter. And we had to make a decision at one point that we didn't have enough vents. We lost pretty much all our staff. They all got sick. I worked with 2 doctors. My director got sick. They all left, and it was just a very
Danielle
cruel.
Just to give you some scope of this, Danielle was running the entire department. And remember, this is in the middle of the Bronx. It's a level 1 trauma center. So just because everyone's dying of COVID doesn't mean people don't have heart attacks. They have strokes.
Right.
They stab each other. They get shot. All the other emergencies that kept that place very busy on an ordinary day, those things still happen. But we couldn't take care of everybody. But what I was starting to say, and I apologize, I really did not anticipate getting this emotional. I really didn't. But we kind of like worked through it, and we've done our healing, and we kind of like moved on. So
I don't think we ever did our healing. I don't think we ever. Maybe this might be the healing. We did healing. I don't think. What I'm trying to say is, yes, we did healing that. We didn't do professional healing. We did healing ourselves.
Well, it sounds like PTSD would be something that would be totally appropriate.
Correct. And that's the point that I'm trying to say. But before we get to that,
hang on.
No, we'll go back to the healing.
Okay,
parts.
but you just said we didn't do the healing. I've done a lot of healing.
She did. I didn't. I guess.
I feel like we really have. First of all, yeah, I guess maybe we should come back to the healing part.
Yes.
But to say that we didn't do healing, that's not accurate. But anyway, here we are, like, getting into the middle of this. I did not expect to get so emotional, but what I was starting to say is that I kicked into some kind of like Florence Nightingale mode. I can't even really explain it, but I felt like this was what I trained for. this was my like duty to humanity. Like I could have just gone back upstate. I have a house upstate. I could have gone up there and hid. No problem. A lot of other people did that, and no fault to them. That was a choice. We didn't feel like we had a choice. We were in the hotel room. We got in her truck every day, and we drove over the bridge to the disaster zone, to the war zone. But she ran the whole department. The director of the department, there was no nursing management there. She was the leader.
But that has its pros and cons too. Because, this is one thing that did trigger me. And was that we had gotten to a point that we had nothing left. Meaning that we ran out of ventilators, we ran out of pumps, we ran out of meds, we ran out of everything. So you are now, think about this, you are a professional nurse working with doctors and other leaders along, and now you're choosing who is going to live and who's going to die. And then when when the WHO came in, then there was like no more.
The World Health Organization.
Okay. Yeah.
The world. And then at that point was because there was so much death, and then the city was shutting down at that point, was the fact that we had to stop begging. We had to stop trying to save these lives to protect who was ever left in the professional world to save these patients.
Well, it wasn't only that. Like, for example, if you have, say you have 10 patients here, and 2 of them are, 80 something years old, and they're very near death, the amount of time, energy, and resources it would take to try to resuscitate them would be more than what was available. Therefore, you had to go for the 30-year-old who had a better chance of survival. And this is what we did. And these are the images that are like starting to come back for me. So those 2 80-year-old patients, we just kind of pushed them back into the corner.
And you see them with their eyes open and just laying there. And I would go and say, it's okay. And rub their head and say their wife loves you, and, try to give them a little drink of water. And, one of this vision for me is Larissa. She could probably tell the story better, but she wrote an article that's so interesting. She wrote about COVID in a magazine and for this particular hospital, and it was so vivid. And I have it, and actually we should send you a copy of it.
They have it.
Oh, you read that?
No, I did.
Robin did. You should read it too, because at this point in time, we were just begging, and they had nothing. And now think about this. So now we're just begging. We have nowhere to put these dead bodies. More and more are coming in. We have patients everywhere. We have family members lined up outside to see their loved ones. They can't get in to see their loved ones. Now,
so they're dying alone.
They're being in the
corner.
In these
without any care. They're just imagine this. You're dying. You're incontinent of bowel and bladder. You can't breathe. You don't have any water because there's only one nurse to take care of all these people. We have to focus on the ones that are going to survive. So the ones that are dying, they didn't get any care. They died in their own feces, their own urine, not being able to breathe, suffering, no water, nothing. And
that must break your heart as a caregiver. Yes. It breaks mine listening to it. So.
Yes, and you had these young 22 years that were bartenders or just out in the public and didn't know, what they had either. And, I just remembered we tried, and I know that we weren't supposed to be, intubating and bagging and trying to save their lives, but at some point you would just at the end just try anything. And
it wasn't that we weren't supposed to be intubating. What is it? The disaster protocol for the city, the EMS management system,
disaster management.
They made like a set of rules. Like if a person has no pulse and no then you don't try to resuscitate them. They made like new rules. Like we would ordinarily try to resuscitate people, and so they didn't say like don't ventilate anyone. They just made it like a completely different set of protocol than would ordinarily be, our practice on an ordinary day.
When now you think about all these dead bodies everywhere, they had nowhere to put them.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did was they brought in these big, huge tractor trailer trucks.
Freezer trucks.
Freezer trucks. The huge ones that drive across country every day. And they had them parked in there. But the vivid memory for me is that we had to wheel them up and just dump them in there. They tried to make shelves. There wasn't enough.
They were all dumped in a pile. It looked like Auschwitz or something.
And
all in white body bags.
And it would be piled higher than your height of bodies everywhere. And, in the Bronx, it's hilly. So all their bodily juices are running down into the streets and over your shoes as you went up into these box trucks to drop these bodies.
Facts.
Because the morgues were overwhelmed.
Way overwhelmed. They were wait, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just the morgues. Okay, the morgues were overwhelmed like in the first week. This thing went on for months. So there was nowhere to put them besides freezer trucks like that you would put, like meat or dead animals.
Right.
I want to say something really quickly. Where you're giving us this opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, I know, so I'm going to say this. Healing comes in many different ways. And I think that we did healing, right? We did healing to the best of our knowledge to get us to a point where we need to be in life to still succeed and be friends and have your family. But when you say healing, there's so many aspects of healing. And I feel if we don't, healing is talking about it, and we never really had it. So yes, we did healing. We did talk about it amongst ourselves, but healing consists of so many steps in life to heal from something. But when I think that you have a PTSD and really don't recognize that, then we're really not healed.
I'm going to disagree with that.
So you can.
I'm not disagreeing with the fact that we definitely have PTSD. But Danielle, I just actually published a chapter in a book. It's called...
She did, but Larissa did. Good.
Becoming Happy, 30 Ways to Heal Your Body, Mind, and Spirit. I have been very focused on healing. That's why I'm shocked to hear her say this, because I'm shocked that she's saying this. Because we have made a concerted effort to help ourselves and to heal ourselves. Actually, how I met Robin is that at a certain point, I just said, you know what? I'm out of here. It was after the whole influx. It was after things started to become more normal, where I felt like I did my duty. And this was like a year and a half later. I said, you know what? I'm burnt out. So I took off.
Did it feel like it was just never going to end? I mean, It just must have felt like it was just never going to end.
Well, it didn't really, in a sense. Maybe COVID ended, but after the...
Wait, can I finish my...
Yes, she can, but I don't want to think. So, yes, because I'm going to listen to you, because I never got that opportunity, but go ahead.
So, but you did. Okay, so I took off. I went to this little tiny Caribbean island off of Puerto Rico. That's where that's where I know Robin from. I took more time off than Danielle did. So maybe some of what she's saying, she doesn't feel like she's really like let go of this. And obviously I haven't either. Like I really thought I was really, everything was copacetic. I didn't realize how close to the surface this,
Well,
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
To me, like
That piece right there.
like this element of grief, and grief is something, unlike PTSD, grief is something, and I've experienced some tremendous grief in my life, and you live with it and you function and you're capable of happiness, but it can sneak up on you.
Yes, that's I guess what I'm talking about.
I don't think
So anyway, I made a concerted effort, a conscious effort to distance myself from this line of work for a moment because I was burnt out. Like I did not want to go to work. I didn't want to go, and I wasn't going to go, and I didn't go. I jumped on the plane. So I found healing with horses in Vieques, and actually that's what my portion of this book that we just published is about. So I really made a concerted effort to, because I knew that it wasn't okay, like that I had intrusive thoughts, that I kept thinking about this image that Danielle so explicitly described of these dead bodies piled up on each other with the bodily fluids leaking out, and the smell. We didn't get to the smell. It was not good, even though it was a freezer truck. Like there was rotting bodies in there. So I knew that I needed to take a little break, and I had the opportunity to do that. Luckily, I was hired at a horse farm, Esperanza Riding Company in Vieques. So I had a little break. I got to hang out with the horses. I started to feel better. I'm back to work now, but I took actually 4 winters. I took several months off every winter and just did what I wanted to do. I made art. I played with the horses. I hung out on the beach, and I also brought Danielle down. And she wasn't able to spend as much time, so she has not had as much healing time or away time.
And it sounds like this is something that you were able to do for yourself. A lot of people probably can't. I was one of them. I mean, some people have family obligations or whatever, and so it doesn't sound to me like this was something offered to you. It sounds to me like something you found on your own and pursued.
Okay. So yeah, that gets to the kind of bigger picture here. When we're looking at, the whole system, the whole healthcare system, and all the flaws, and the whole Western model of medicine, and what you're getting at, the fact that we were not taken care of. Here we are. We're warrioresses. We are going in there every day when we didn't have to try to save people's lives.
I did. I couldn't not go to work. I had to go to work. I had to support my family. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice to quit. Regardless, I had a baby. And
a grandbaby.
I had to feed her and clothe her, and that was formula at the time. And so I didn't have a choice not to work. I never did, and I still don't. But that's okay. I mean, I had to do it.
Well, and don't get me wrong, the majority of people have to work. I mean, that's just part of life. Right. But it does sound to me like part of the healthcare system should include taking care of healthcare workers. I think it's
just try to get this concept. During this whole time, I was an agency nurse. I wasn't employed by the hospital. I didn't have any health insurance.
Wow.
So here I am. I don't know. I'm Irish Italian. I guess I must have good genes. I never got sick. mean, I was positive. Everyone was positive. We were covered with it. I didn't get sick, thankfully, because, you know, I didn't have any health insurance. If I had to go to the ICU, then that bill would be my responsibility. And there actually, early on, five staff members at the hospital where we worked died. And one of the family members for a staff member who was an ICU patient got a bill in the mail for tens of thousands of dollars for someone who contracted the illness while they were working there, had worked there for many years, and died in the line of duty, and their family got the bill.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. Do you feel like there were ever bureaucratic decisions made about who lived and died based on their ability to pay for their care?
No.
Oh, that's good, at least.
Yeah. No. It really, I think, came to...
We don't deal with, like, nurses don't deal with insurance. Like, that's not part of our
your job
practice.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have to say, I believe...
Seek help because of that? Do you think there were more people that just didn't seek help?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There was many that died in their homes. And I don't think that it was, you know, I don't think that it was, there was many family members that died in their homes. And they lived with their dead bodies for days on end or until they can get to them because, you know, they couldn't get to them.
It's not like ordinarily you would call the funeral home and the funeral home would come pick up the body. But there was
it literally sounds like the Black Plague.
Yes.
Hundreds of years ago.
Yes. I would never, you know, I studied those things in nursing school eons ago. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever think that I would live through a plague like this, like the plague type scenario. It was really something.
What if it happens again? I mean, is anyone any better prepared? Do you feel like?
To be honest, no, I don't. I really don't think so. I mean, being in the, you know, because we have, right now we have like, we have a excessive amount of sick patients in New York City in these hospitals, and it's heavy every day, and it's not as heavy as you know, it will be. It's nothing like what we went through. I mean, that was a war zone. But ever since COVID, it's almost like it's corporate.
Yes,
it's very corporate, and nursing and the healthcare systems are not the same. And it's really, I believe that no, we're not, I don't think we are prepared if we come back to ever seeing something like the coronavirus, whereas, you know, the city shut down and we were not prepared, and I don't feel we are prepared again.
What do you think would be a way to start supporting healthcare providers better in the event that, well, even just now on a daily basis, I think you're understaffed, overworked.
Absolutely.
I mean, but what has to change in order for, I mean, it starts at the top. And if the providers aren't well treated and cared for, the care for the patients suffers because there's not enough nurses, there's not enough doctors, there's not enough support staff. What has to change, and what does that look like?
Our insurance systems, and it's all about money.
Agree.
It's absolutely. I mean, look at what just went. It's our insurance systems. It's all about money, and the healthcare profession is overworked and underpaid. They're not listened to. And it's almost like they are trying to recoup money that was lost from something as severe as COVID-19.
Right.
And so you asked that question, are we prepared? No, they're trying to it's almost like they're trying to recoup. A lot of nurses left, a lot of healthcare professionals left.
A lot.
Since the coronavirus pandemic.
Are there less people going into it now, do you think?
No, but there's people going into it for the wrong reasons. The profession has completely changed overall. And a lot of it is due to corporate. Yeah.
That's so frustrating. I mean, it must be incredibly frustrating for you. It's frustrating for me as an observer and obviously a participant in our healthcare system, but it must be devastating for you.
It is, because overall the patient suffers, and it's all about the patients, else we wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And it's the human aspect of life. It's the human being that suffers terribly. And it's very sad to, you still try to meet everyone's needs, and you're so short-staffed and you just can't. And it stems from the top down. So we are not prepared, no.
To answer your question, like, how can we take care of healthcare workers better? I don't think it's just healthcare workers. I think it's people in general, patients, everyone. How can we take care of everyone better? The whole Western model of medicine is set up like with the disease model, as in prevention is almost like non-existent in terms of if America spends the most on healthcare and has like the worst outcomes.
Because people, the fattest people, I 100% agree.
Okay, and so here's where where nurses could be, if there were more of us. This is where we could be crucial in the wellness of the people and ourselves. For example, so the way the model is set up now, let's just use a very basic example. Someone comes in, they have a headache. Okay, the way the model is set up now in our system, someone comes in with a headache. They say, "Oh, doctor, I have a headache." The doctor looks at them for 3 seconds, goes and orders a medication, Tylenol, tells the nurse, give him a Tylenol and get him out the door, because there's 5 more people behind him and we don't have time to deal with this guy. He's got a headache, big deal, give him a Tylenol. All right, so we don't take the time to say to the person, the nurse could be doing this, and this is what we want to do. This is what we were trained to do. This is what the right thing to do is say, "Well, mister, hello, how are you doing today?" Actually treat them like a human being and say, "Oh, you have a headache. Well, how much water have you been drinking?"
Right.
Did you have you been sleeping well? Tell me what's going on with you. Stress is a huge killer. Just one simple thing like a headache, we just throw a pharmaceutical at it, and then of course Tylenol. The people making Tylenol are bringing in the money. This is just one little tiny small example, but the whole system is set up like this. So if we had an ounce of prevention
and wellness, just
education, wellness education, and wellness support, and it's not rocket science. It's pretty simple, but we as a culture have gotten so far away from it because
everyone wants a pill to fix it. Everyone wants
who is pushing those pills?
But it's about the money.
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of times the doctors are pushing it because they're getting paid by the pharmaceutical company. So,
and who is making all the money?
The pharmaceutical company.
Yes, and who else? The insurance companies.
The insurance companies.
And
yeah.
And they don't actually want you to be well, to be honest, because then they don't get as much money. So
it's funny. There was and I'm not going to name a product name, but there's a popular multivitamin that is made by one of the big pharma companies. And I said, "Oh, Mom, you can't take this. They have no interest in you being well. This vitamin is not good for you." And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it stands to reason. These people don't want you well.
No.
You're good to them well.
Nope. And okay, so people get angry, like at the whole system. And I know the CEO of the big insurance company was just shot in New York City. What was the name of that insurance company?
United Health, I believe.
United, yes. And people are angry, and people aren't getting taken care of in
where they're losing their lives on the fact that the decisions are made by non-healthcare professionals to decide what is going to be paid for and what is not going to be paid for. And we'll make that decision because we're the insurance company.
Well, and that's what's happened also with Robin, and you know her and you know her story.
Yes.
And, you have these healthcare providers saying, yes, she needs either a liver transplant or what have you, and then getting denied by insurance. And these are pencil pushers. They're not doctors. It's amazing to me that we have this.
Actually, I just thought of something. Talking about this, and then I think something that's maybe, it wasn't our healthcare systems during COVID that kept us going. It was the people supporting us. Here alone, I don't know if Larissa remembers, but every night at a certain time.
I remember.
Every night at a certain time, they would get on their balconies and bang their pots and pans.
At shift change.
For the heroes coming home from work.
When we got out of the hospital.
And, not only our own institutions. So when you talk about healing in this, I think healing, we can find this healing has triggered me because I also became very emotional when I started talking about this COVID, and we talk about wellness and how we could do this, but it was the people who supported us. It wasn't our institutions that supported us during this time, and I think that's really important to look at. It's a very big piece there.
Yeah. Okay, I was actually just going to go down that road as well. Okay, so when you're talking about people who are angry, they're angry with the healthcare system, they're angry at the insurance companies, they're angry that they pay so much money in insurance and they don't get taken care of properly, they're not getting good healthcare, and they're mad, and they're mad at everyone. But it's like, do you realize nurses have little to no power or autonomy or control over what happens in administration at the top? We're like little hamsters in a wheel. We're like running. We're trying to help people because that's who we are, and that's what we train to do, and that's we are healers. We're healers.
It's a less respected profession now.
Well, some of us are. Danielle and I are anyway. You get the whole gamut. But here we are running like little hamsters. We don't make any of the decisions. We don't say where the money goes. I mean, I don't like to use the word victim, but
you can be victimized without feeling like you're the victim.
Okay, so we are victimized by it's a broken system. It's a broken system. The money, it is all. If you took a nurse, if someone who actually cared about humanity and cared about wellness went to the top and decided, okay, this is where the money's going to go. We're gonna put this much into prevention. We're going to put this much into nutrition and diet and education and all the things that and it's just common sense.
Right.
But that's not where the money goes. The money goes to the pharmaceutical companies. The money goes to the bigwig CEOs of the insurance companies
and hospitals.
And so it's just, the system is broken. But please don't be mad at the nurses, because we, you know, the other thing is too, is you come and you get a crappy nurse because she's not nice, she's not friendly, she's not loving, kind, compassionate. And you know what? That's honestly not her fault either, because you get so run down, you get so exhausted, you get zero appreciation from the facilities. You're just another number. What they want is for you to get the patient in, get the money, and get the patient out, especially in the ER. It's in and out, in and out, in and out. You don't have time to talk. You can't talk to your patient. How can you have a healing relationship? How can you have a moment for education, for support, for, you know, learning about your disease process? I had a 38-year-old guy come in the other day. This breaks my heart. He has high blood pressure, and he came in stage 4 kidney failure. And he said, "Why are my kidneys failing, doctor?" And the doctor said, "Because you didn't take care of your high blood pressure." And he said, "You know, I'm not a dumb person. No one ever told me that high blood pressure would kill my kidneys." And here this guy is 38 years. He's probably had high blood pressure since he was 20 years old. And we have to be responsible for ourselves too. But in a different scenario where you're not in a broken system, where prevention is important, where education is important, where caring about people is important, where putting money into where it actually makes a difference for people's lifestyle, and he could have been saved. That guy's going to die. He's going to be on dialysis at 38 years old. He's, you know, going to die eventually. You can't live without your kidneys. I mean, and for what reason? It hurts me inside. And then I can't do a good job as a nurse, because I just have these people coming at me. Boom, 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 boom. I got to go down the line. My job is to throw pills at them. Here's your pill, here's your pill, here's your pill, here's your pill. I just take the order from the doctor. Yes, doctor. Pill, 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 pill. And, you know, I try to jump in there and squeeze in a little TLC, a little education.
A little humanity. You know?
But I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, we're actually starting.
There's just a very few left, because they're crushed. It's not that Florence Nightingale model.
I read about smaller communities where their hospitals are closing across the United States. Maybe, I don't think New York or whatever, and people having to drive 50, 60 miles now just to go to a hospital. Mm-hmm. And so care is becoming less and less available, not more and more available. And so I think more and more, I mean, I don't know if it's going to take a grassroots movement where people start teaching kids starting in kindergarten on up how to take care of themselves, both physically and mentally. Are you stressed? Are you sleeping? Like you said, basic stuff that we should all pay attention to.
Well, there are some countries who have it a little bit better patient outcomes and a little bit of a different system, like Canada or like Sweden or France. They're doing a little bit of a better job of all this, in my opinion.
Well, they also don't have as many, and I'm a chef, so I bring food into it, but they also, especially in France and Sweden, they don't allow a lot of the same chemicals, dyes, and additives.
That's
we start getting people sick at an early age.
That is truly one of the basics. It's just a basic, all the sugar.
Nutrition.
When don't even get me started. I could go on and on. It's simple. It's simple basics. We don't take care of ourselves, and then instead of getting good advice from a doctor, you get what you get is a pill to fix it. Yeah. Not enough education, not understanding of treatment options, just the average layperson. And then
It's like being the parent of a newborn, you know?
Do you have any more questions about the pandemic?
Well, I know Robin wants us to start wrapping up, but it seems to me like that there's a lot more that we could talk about. So maybe we should schedule another session if you guys were interested in doing that. I think with the pandemic, I do have one sort of like to bring it all together. I know for the American public and probably the global public, there was a big lack of information. And when there's a lack of information, there becomes a lot of misinformation. Every person with an opinion was making a YouTube video, and the theories and whatnot were going crazy.
Conspiracy theories.
Oh my gosh.
I have a few of my own, actually, but that's a whole other topic.
Right, and ditto. But my to me, a lot of it was the lack of information. Should you mask? Shouldn't you mask? What should you vaccinate? Shouldn't you vaccinate? Should you? And it feels to me like that information is on a base level, whether it's about COVID or about well-being, is what's really essential. And there's a lack of information when it comes to medical care. Do you feel like you guys were at least given any accurate information, or do you feel like you were sort of in the boat with the rest of everyone for a long time, really not even knowing what to do?
No, because everybody, we weren't given the information.
Honey, we weren't even given a mask.
Yeah, that part's insane.
We weren't given basic.
I bought my own.
Yeah.
For $1,000.
Yeah, we had, yes.
Wow. To keep me, or us.
You're talking about information.
Safe.
We were in survival mode.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and scientists often disagree, and it's hard to know what, you have to sort of wade through, what's available and form your own opinion about it.
And I think, even the family members were misinformed of their loved ones. I mean,
it definitely did not go into how horrible it was.
They didn't get to see their loved one before they died. They didn't even get to see their body or have a proper funeral. I mean, it was very sad. I think we could have done this completely different.
Yeah.
If they just thought about the person as a human being.
Right.
Well, at that point, it was a war. It was a war. Like, it was a war zone. I don't, it just spiraled out of control. I don't know how we could have done it better, but.
Right. Well, it doesn't sound like there was any kind of playbook. You know what I mean?
No.
There was no strategy because.
Day by day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing with us.
I want to give you and Robin my sincere, heartfelt gratitude that you're interested in our story. Nobody ever asked us about our story before.
I can't believe that. It's so relevant. It's so relevant.
And to be able to share it and have it maybe help, with defining like the whole picture of our broken healthcare system. I'm very honored, and I am so very grateful to have this opportunity.
I am as well.
I really, really thank you for coming and sharing your story. It's so important, and definitely so important having healthcare providers, because a lot of our shows we've had people that have been disappointed by the healthcare system or have had diseases or issues that haven't been resolvable, but we haven't really had healthcare providers giving us their feelings on it. And it's really, they're in alignment with how everyone feels. Everyone wants humanity and community to work.
Yes.
That's the key.
Bottom line.
Yeah. Well, I really want to thank you both for being here today. I know it was emotional and not easy to talk about, and so important for everyone to hear.